Hello, everyone. Um, Lives. I've stopped doing lives and I stopped doing videos a long time ago while I was going through the PTSD, right? And something that I've discovered is that my stubbornness actually is good for something. So, who would say that being stubborn is good? Well, curiosity and stubbornness at times in my life have played a big role with understanding not only myself, but the condition at play in order to work with it from a spiritual side of things. I'm not going to go back into the details of the story because that's past and I don't want to be recalling the past because when you start healing, you understand that the past is what it was, and it was what created the lesson. Now, there are some things that at times we mentioned in order to make it more as a experience acknowledgement so others can relate with the process, not because we're stuck in sorry not because we're stuck in the past, but because we've learned things amongst the way or along the way that we think it could be beneficial for people that are going through these circumstances. And my disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional. I am here speaking only about my journey and my experience about how I handle certain situations. So, long story short, when PTSD was discovered, I wanted to understand the spiritual side of having such a condition that triggered anxiety and triggered a lot of things that placed me in fight or flight mode. If you read my post from yesterday, you're going to see that there is a nerve that actually has a lot to do with this kind of things as well as the gut and other things, right? So when I started understanding that PTSD neurologically was connected to a specific trauma that I suffered, I started understanding why I did not have a way of engaging with others, mostly in romantic situations where I felt comfortable. Not not comfortable. Let's place it this way. I was comfortable of being myself, but I had tendencies that were not yet understood in a bodily reaction kind of way. So, spiritually, you have been taught that when there is arguments and futile discussions, wisdom says stay silent, do not engage. Yet, deep inside of us, there are woundings or past traumas that are made a habit in your body that when a situation nearby it comes up, your body is already, I would say, conditioned, like love, right? We're talking about conditional love in this channel. So I want to relate to both of them so you understand. So your body's conditioned to a specific reaction. If we're not in awareness of that subconscious reaction, When somebody actually starts an argument, we automatically change our gear and move into flight or fight mode. Why? Because there is a trigger, which is an action that happened in the past. There is an emotion that is attacked to that old situation. And there is a body conditioning that has been a behavioral pattern that has not been worked. So when they said you're diagnosed with PTSD, for a moment, the doctors tried to state that I had bipolar disorder. So I started investigating about both the conditions. What were the causes? What were the roots? What nerves? What organs will it affect? And that's when I say I become a little bit not obsessive, but stubborn in seeking for answers. That's why some people tell me you're a seeker, but there's more behind what meets the eye. Being a healer, you are both a seeker as well as a healer, and you have more things, which is also a channeler, because there is a point where what you're being told does not make any sense. So you spiritually look for answers, and your higher being, which has all the answers in this world, they will give you little breadcrumbs here and there of what path to follow if you follow your guidance, the guidance of the heart, the guidance of that unconditional love that lives inside of you. So I knew that I cannot allow nobody, not even myself, to box me in within that condition. Obviously, I did follow medical advice, did the therapies that they recommended, used the medicines that they recommended. These medicines played a big role in gaining weight, also not being able to. I was feeling discombobulated. I could not grasp reality or grounding because I was feeling disconnected. So when all this happens and I had side effects for the pills, after a few months of being medicated, I spoke to my general doctor about it, and we decided that we're going to take a different route. We worked with the doctor that was prescribing me the meds in order to stop taking them gradually and then try them by separate, right? One of them was causing me to have heart palpitations, like it was a tension, like you were having an anxiety attack. We had to stop that one. The other one was causing muscle reactions in me where I was sitting down and from a sudden I was just holding something very tight, and I wouldn't understand it. And then my feet were tight. So everything was stressing out, neck, back, whatever. All my muscles were just tensioning. So at that point, obviously, it resulted that from all the cures that are there, I was kind of not able to take them because I had a different reaction to all of them. One of them did put me in a very irritable space, and I had to discontinue it because I was being snappy. So when all of this happened, I said, I trust my gut instinct in the knowing that there has to be a spiritual answer to all of this. So as I do all time, I just sit in silence, I meditate, I ask, because I couldn't focus on anything that wasn't my own healing, right? So when I start working on these things, I start getting guidance and several things come up. I have wrote it in the community tab, etc. But one of the things that became very important in my journey was the wisdom of how needless it is to engage. So if you want to fight with somebody, you need a second person to fight with, because the one that is actually the instigator cannot fight with somebody that doesn't have an answer. Trust me, I've been in both sides of the row in my normal life, in my past actions, yet this is something that I didn't correlate with the conditioning of the body, of how the body reacted, not the mind. Because in my mind, I knew the spiritual aspects of thing, but my body already has its own reactions to things, and I didn't know where that came from. And that's why I started studying a little bit more about the vagus nerve and how a receptor it is and how it automatically puts you on fight or flight mode. So I started trying to work with presence and acknowledgement. So in the moment that I was triggered, obviously by my mom, because I hermitized myself in order not to affect nobody else outside of my immediate family, which was my mom. So I try not to initiate interactions or conversations with others that could actually get me into the trigger point, because I wanted to experience firsthand with people I trusted what was the pattern. So I realized there were keywords that were very disturbing to me, and there were sensations that were disturbing to me. When I started making the relation of them, I started giving them a new meaning. So, for an example, spiritually, I understood projections as well as I understood spiritual attacks. Here's where the archons come in. A lot of people think that archons are the ones that are receiving you, so you can actually think that you have to reincarnate, right? But within this matrix, or what we call our reality, there's a lot of illusions created by energies. So in order to understand this, we have to see the world as, and everything around us as, an energy pentagram, if you want to relate it to music. So let's say that I'm in this high scale. This is the arcan complexion, which is the lower scale. They want to make you go from here to down here, because the only way they can feed from you is from fear. So when I started relating or correlating that with how my body was reacting, I started giving names to things. So, for an example, if my mom will say something that would trigger me, I started laughing and not deviating the guilt trip, but saying, "Hey, mom, you're doing it again." And she'll be like, "What are you talking about?" Right? And she will say like something like, "Oh, I get it." Right? And then she will knew what my cues were. Obviously, you cannot do this with everybody else, because you have to practice at home so you can actually bring it to the outside world. So what I was noticing is that her own patterns and behaviors that did not commute with me because they were on a different energetic level were the ones that were actually making me feel either butterflies in my stomach, goosebumps, or tensions in my body. And then as soon as I capture them, I will acknowledge them and say, I understand you're there, but this is not the same scenario is safe. I'm on the phone. If I'm texting a friend, I'm texting. There's nobody around me, right? So when you start compartmentalizing the interaction and you understand how to deal with it, then you can start putting yourself out there and coming back to the world with a different perception and a different understanding of not only how your body reacts to trauma, but as well as what to do in order to be the safety blank you need. Because when we have these conditions, I cannot depend on anybody else. It's the same in a relationship. If you think that you're happy because the person that is with you is the one that brings happiness to your life, you're not happy. You're living an illusion. And you're living an illusion because happiness is something that is within us. Therefore, if I make somebody accountable for my happiness, that means that I am either not fully healed within, avoiding my responsibility, or not aware enough of how this would affect me in a future event. So, let's say, for an example, you are in a partnership, you're getting to know that person, and you start noticing that you do not have the same frequency in the energy. You will understand that that person will not be receptive to what you're talking about, and vice versa, right? And the tension starts. So with PTSD, that tension is 10 times more because obviously there is a trauma that has been involved. So when I started understanding this, I started putting myself, and I say I pushed myself or obligated myself, but I really didn't. I actually did it because I'm a curious person and I'm a person that is all about unconditionally loving the experience in order to take the best knowledge out of it and be able to share it from a point where maybe people that are not reading a specific book on X and Y can apply it to their spirituality and find ways to cope healthily, like with under healthy ways or out of toxicity of their experiences so they can evolve in the journey. So I call everyone pilgrims because I believe that we are all walking this walk in order to understand how to be free of conditioning. And there is different part of conditioning. There is mindsets and conditionings of mindsets, conditionings of culture, conditionings of status, conditionings of a lot of things that are elusive. And they're elusive or illusory. And the reason why I say this is when you know, you know. And when you have this gut feeling about the truth, regardless of what the lie outside of you is, your body is going to say you're not living in your truth. So when I started the channel, I was speaking about the things that I was finding, but I was in my journey of healing. Therefore, the universe is not dumb. Okay, you're speaking about love, yet you still are scared. You still live in fear. You still have this, you still have that, right? So the experiences around me were just triggers to that conditioning. As soon as you comprehend that, you start breaking things in pieces to not make it a puzzle that fits, but to move the shapes into your own organized disorder. I don't know how to explain it better. If you're a creative and you're an artist, you have to understand you create from emotions. And this is something that I want to tell every artist out there. if you're a painter, if you're a writer, if you're a songwriter, if you're a musician, the majority of the time, you go to the low frequency of suffering in order to create. But then you have to acknowledge that that is an illusion, that is temporary, so you can express your emotions. And you have to let your body understand, I'm creating from past experiences, but this is not what I'm living today. So you can actually live the truth of the reality and not the illusion of what happened. A lot of people talk about positive affirmations, thoughts, etc., etc. But when you are in the depth of the dark night of the soul, duality becomes a challenge. For you guys to understand duality, there is always going to be a left and there's always going to be a right. Right or wrong, good or bad. So if you have a relationship and your partner is having a bad day and they get home and they just like burst out and you feel offended and attacked, then you're just absorbing that energy and multiplying it. But what if we take a step back and we think about what unconditional love is? We acknowledge that it's not against me. He's just having a bad day. We're not justifying. Please make sure you're not justifying bad habits. It's not the same. What I'm talking is a good relationship where they have a bad moment, right? A good relationship will be built because people will understand this. So there is a bad situation going on. The part that that person needs from me is my support. I'm better off staying silent in the way of not taking it personal, allowing the person to go through whatever they're going through. And what do you think is going to be the only thing that maybe that person may not be waiting for? You can share a simple nodding of your head, which means acknowledgement. You're still not talking. You can just, as a lot of people tend to ask, what can I do for you? At times, people don't want to be asked, what can I do for you? So I believe in touch if the person is not obviously an aggressive person. That's why you have to be understanding of, I'm talking about a healthy relationship, right? So how would that look will be, I empathize with what they're feeling and I offer my love. So they don't feel like they have to go through it alone. Now, what happens within toxic relationships? Someone will blame the other. And as I posted yesterday, I never knew that I was also part of that experience, that my condition and my reactions caused more havoc than what it should. You live, you love, you learn, right? If we don't go through those experiences, then we cannot move or evolve unless we get the lesson of it. So my lesson on that was, my body was conditioned to react a certain way. Therefore, my vagus nerve went in fight or flight mode. Therefore, my brain started brainstorming of worst case scenarios. Therefore, I will be defensive. I'll just walk away. But I thought at the time I was an avoidant. And something very funny was that my doctor said, I don't think you're an avoidant because if not, you won't be sitting here. What I think that you have is maybe a tendency of not, how do I say it, not engaging. And I'm like, well, I do engage, right? Because I know me. Um, Obviously, I know now I know my condition. I can say I know me, right? But then I was like, yeah, I would engage. I would not stay silent. And then that's when it sank in how futile it is to try to explain to somebody something and that person only having their stubborn side of the story and not understanding the how complex the body, the mind, and the vibration makes it feel worse or more raced than what it is. So I have a belief, and that belief is that if you are vibrating in a high frequency and you understand what the arcans and what the frequencies and the vibrations of the different levels are, you mature your emotions by understanding that there are things that should not be answered, not because you're dismissive, but because you respect yourself and you don't need to justify yourself or defend yourself in front of an accusation. What happened in my trauma? I was always accused from doing things that I didn't do. Therefore, that created in me a habitual pattern of wanting to defend myself because in my mind I knew I was not doing something wrong, but that person was making me look like the culprit, right? So obviously when a situation like that one came, my hairs will stand up, I will have butterflies in the stomach, and I will go into the anxiety portion of the bodily reaction, and that will trigger a lot of train of thoughts that will be like I'm scared or an alarm system. By recognizing the steps of it, I can actually vibrate in a higher frequency without allowing external forces to, I will say, mend in my reality. Why I speak about my reality and my truth? The way I connect the dots may not be the same way you connect the dots, but regardless, within the conversation, there might be something that will say, oh, I do that. Oh, I can work with this. Oh, you know? And how I learned was I would always ask for guidance. And based on the channeling of the messages that I was posting in the community, I will see, okay, why this Bible passage? Why this? Why that? And connect the dots. That's why I always say that the Bible is more than just a book. For me, the Bible is a blueprint of your entire vessel. And the division between the soul, the spirit, and the vessel, and how to connect the three. So there is the famous Trinity. When you reach that Trinity, then you can work in being illuminated. And being illuminated means that you stop only staying in the theory part of things, but start practicing them as well as forming different realities based on your new perception. So now, if I hear someone attacking me directly because they think that I am offending them, if the attack comes with, I will say, a manipulative tone to it, not because I hear it in the sound, but because I recognize the projection, then I step back, I breathe. I'm not going to tell the person I know you're projecting, right? Because that is instigating the instigator to actually think that they're right. I'm just going to sit back, acknowledge, ignore, and not engage, which is very difficult mostly for people with PTSD, or I heard a little bit about bipolar disorder, where it states that you have maniac, uh, what, however you call it, which you can be totally active and then totally passive, or you can be totally hype up and then you can be totally depressed. If you understand that you are an indigo child, or you are a star seed, or you are more connected to the divine than the experience, you will understand that the only thing that is happening within you is that your dualistic nature, based on indoctrination, is pushing you to be on the left or on the right, on the good or on the bad. Acknowledging that part of the spiritual aspect of life gives you this new perception where, okay, I am this center. This is where I am, and this is where I stand. I'm not provoking anyone, but I also don't allow them to trigger me because I understand the projection. I understand with discernment what's going on around me. I can try to explain it with the Bible, like in phrases like don't give, ¿cómo es? No le des luz a tus ojos. I think if I translate it verbatim, it's not going to be mentioning the Bible. Like, no le des sueño a tus ojos. Don't give, I will say, false dreams to your eyes and things like that, right? You have senses, and the sensorial in you, smell, touch, sight, whatever, need to be activated in order to have an experience. When love comes to the equation, mostly in relationships, there is facets of them. And I have a very classical mind. I don't think that the woman has to be at home and the man has to be working, but I do understand how that fits within the masculine and energy interaction, where it's not that the woman wants to stay at home and always be the mom, but they also can create because they are independent, right? It's also that the man is the one with the ability of profiting of the women's balanced energy. And how do I explain this in better words so people can understand it? Is at the end of a union, there's four energies converting in one: masculine and feminine energy on the divine masculine, masculine and feminine energy on the divine feminine. So, for a woman to actually feel safe to work with embodying the feminine aspect of her energy, she needs to work independently the masculine energy so she can feel secure and confident on her own. And then for the men to be in their masculinity, they need to fix their feminine energy in order for them to feel empowered to be that provider, the security of the union, right? So when two people that are balancing their energies unite with each other, the woman in her feminine is the one that provides the energy that is needed of nourishment, and the man the security that is needed for the nourishment, and vice versa. It's like it's always, a lot of people say opposites attract. A lot of people say that peoples that are mirrored to each other, they're meant to be together, and there's so many crazy things that we have invented towards the eras, that I only believe in one thing. If you understand unconditional love, and the other person that is with you understands unconditional love, none of them will be the culprits or the victims. They're both will be standing in their power and sharing the energies and making them work as a special dance. So why for me it became like important, the healing process, because there were words that were triggering me that I didn't want to feel triggered from, and I was asking the wrong people not to use it. Because as soon as I will say, please don't use that word because I don't like it, I dislike it, they will use it more and more and more and more to see how they could trigger me. And then I realized that within that game, my vagus nerve went into high alert. Obviously, that affects your cortisol levels and that affects your body. And if you continue to be in that interaction, it's like a wave that expands. So there is a book, The Four Languages of Love, that I read and I didn't understand why the guy will ask all of his patients, whenever a person is doing the things that you dislike, just continue to feel love for them. Just continue to love them, and do not engage. And he gave certain specific facts, and I realize now that anybody can be with whoever they want if they're both are willing. No, even if one of them is the one that carries the energy, and I'm going to tell you why. Energy is bright and it's contagious, the same than negativity is contagious. It's something that is transferred from one person to the other. So if I allow a situation or a circumstance in a certain point of my life to embody or be absorbed and recreate, what I'm doing is I'm allowing my body, my mind, and my soul to come out of connection. And then automatically, the vagus nerve will actually do his job of protecting and will go in fight or flight mode. I don't know if it makes sense because it sounds like a lot of gibberish because I'm not a professional, but in the spiritual aspect of life, if you read the Bible, you'll see how the blueprint is there. And if you look at the story, for an example, I was reading the story of Samson, the guy that when they cut their hair, he lost their power. I think he lost his hair because he allowed his eyes to see an illusion and believe an illusion that wasn't real. Therefore, that illusion took his energy away from him because the power and his energy came from the hair. Because I believe that if your hair grows pretty fast, it's because you have a good connection with the divine. Because we are cells that actually heal themselves in order for us to be moving, living, having the different things that we have. Now, obviously, we all have different type of viruses or bacterias that we have to be careful of. But when you work the sanity from the inside out, the external won't affect you. I'm not saying I'm perfect, or I'm not saying that I will never get triggered. I have to learn as I go. What I know is where I'm going to allow myself to be and how I'm going to speak up for myself without having to feel the need of being scared, which for a person with PTSD, it's very challenging because our body reacts faster than our mind. And then automatically that alert triggers the mind. So, what I learned is that boxing breathing, breathing for counts or five, and then holding for the same amount and releasing, helps in the moment to lower the reaction. If you need a second breath, that second breath helps you a little bit into thinking your response. And then eloquently, you can just express what you feel. What I see that is a disconnection within people, all of us, right? Because I went through it. I talk by experience. Is that we live in a pace in this world that is so fast that you don't take time anymore for enjoying what you need to enjoy. If you're sitting at a table eating your meal and you don't focus in your food, you're focusing in something else, you're going to gain weight because your body's not realizing what you're doing. And then you're not living the experience. The same goes with love. If you're not present in the moment, if you're not open to be vulnerable, you're not open to communicate with words how you feel, it becomes the same. So at the end of all, the reason why I think this unconditional love came into my life as a movement or as a sharing environment of healing, it was that even though I didn't know I didn't know the whole entire, I would say, how to apply it, I knew that there was a reason to the madness. Everything has a purpose in life. And I do have to find the right words to communicate and express myself. And I'm learning to communicate in different ways because I can go from sounding very loving to being very passionate, but I don't mean to be argumentative. And at times when that happens, a lot of people have a bad reaction or trigger of what I say. So if I hear myself raising my voice or I hear myself speaking too fast, I take a step back. I breathe and I say, I acknowledge it first. Okay, you're in turbo mode, right? Speedy Gonzalez, lower it down. And then I'll go like, yeah, I'm not the road runner. let me go back, let me do this, right? And I laugh. And the reason why I laugh is because even though this is not a joke, guys, if you don't learn to all of you, if you don't learn to love your own ignorance, if you don't learn to love your own, like your own mistakes, you will never learn, because you're either blaming someone else or looking for somebody else to enable you. So they make you think with manipulation that you're right. And that's how a lot of people end up in relationships where they come, they go, and you end up with nothing. Or if you're in the other side of the situation, like in my case, in the past, I was never able to allow things to grow because I didn't know that my PTSD was triggered the alert and flight mode. So, learning that I'm not an avoidant, but that I have high intuition based on a spiritual journey has made me also understand the nudges of the spirit within the tingles sensations in the body, but also learning how the nervous system works in order to understand that you have to learn about the three different compartments of the mind, where the pineal gland is, what the vagus nerve does, how does it affect your gut, etc. That's why I say my stubbornness at times is funny, because if I wasn't stubborn enough to believe that I could heal from something that was triggered by the neurological aspect of the vessel, then I wouldn't have allowed my higher self, or divine consciousness, like people call it, to give me the downloads and the things that I along the way posted in the community tab, so I can not only see where I was not okay, but others were not okay. Not to judge, but to learn what true compassion is. Not to judge, but to understand what true forgiveness is. Not to judge, but to finally let go of the guilt trip that wasn't mine to carry. So that's why instead of being live, I took the route, or doing videos, I took the route of writing. I write everything I post, and I discover that at times I tend to repeat a story when I'm in a conversation. So even though some people hold me accountable for it, other people that don't know me cannot hold me accountable for it. But while I learn, I need to be more aware of the circumstance and the situation, so I can understand, okay, if I'm repeating this again, why? I have to find the meaning in me. Why am I so stuck in this subject and repeating it over and over again? And then I will see, okay, what emotion is attached to this. And then I will see, okay, where does this emotion come from? Why am I feeling in this moment triggered or scared or happy or whatever emotion, right? And then I can realize, okay, this is not mine. This is what's mom. This is not mine. This was dad. This is not mine. This was my grandma style. And little by little, that's what I call unmasking myself and healing myself life. Not because I'm doing it this as we go, is because I worked on it on myself. That's what they call working your shadow. But on a world that is so distracted with duality, and arguments and people taking sides and people doing whatever they want without being held accountable, that energy of lower frequencies is vibrating so much around you that you need to become very discerning of what is true and what is false, what is reality and what is illusion, so you can create your own world. And when I say create your own world, we're not talking only about the power of manifesting, because as I explained yesterday, if you are the one in control of creating, then nothing that is happening around you happened without a reason. It happened for you to actually be able to wake up from the dream and leave the dream, or for you to revert back into old patterns because it's too difficult to accept who you are and the truth. Um, I will stick into writing and not doing the eyes are the window of the soul, because it may be a little bit uncomfortable. I think that we lost connection. Let me see. I think that my tone may be a little bit uncomfortable for others to cope with my tone. So that's why artificial intelligence come into play. So I will write whatever I will write. And if I see it that is way too crowded and doesn't make sense, I will just post it on, I will say something like Copilot or ChatGPT, and will ask them, can you please organize it so it looks clean and remove the repetitive theme. So what it does is it put it in a way that is more simple for others to understand what I'm trying to communicate. So this is a learning process. No one is perfect, but I do love my imperfections, because within my own stubbornness, I found truth, light, peace, and love for me and for others. So I hope you guys join the community. Um, if you want to show it with a like, then fine. If you just want to be hiding, that's fine as well. You know why? Because sometimes we need to read things that help us, but we're not ready to show ourselves. Take care. Bye bye.